Welcome to Chemistry Lover, and here we are officially at the beginning of the chemical reaction. So this is the most important video on chemical reaction because this is the official beginning of this topic, and here we will ask this question that chemical reaction how far and how fast, and these two questions are very important, right? So this how far this deals with thermodynamics and how fast this deals with kinetics, right? What is mean by that we will see within a moment. Now let us first just recapitulate that whatever we have learned till now. So we learned the basic stereochemical things, and we also established the chemical structures, the orbitals, and the conjugations, the energy lowering conjugation, energy rising conjugation, and all these things. And we also know about various kind of forces, which some of the forces which pull the molecules apart, and that is the reason for their stability, whereas there are some forces like hydrogen bonding, then van der Waals force. All these forces, these are attractive forces, and also Coulombic forces. These are the attractive forces which bring the molecules closer, right? Now we also have seen that not all these forces are effective enough to do a chemical reaction. For example, if you have a ammonium cation like NH4 plus, and if you bring it to benzene ring, what will happen? These proton which are positively polarized due to the positive charge on nitrogen, it will interact with the pi electron cloud of benzene, right? And this is kind of pi to hydrogen bonding, right? So this is from pi electron cloud, electron is going to the hydrogen. This is a kind of hydrogen bonding, and there are several this kind of examples are there, but these interactions are not enough to do a chemical change within a molecule. So all attractive force are not enough to do a chemical reaction within a molecule, and there are some other factors which are responsible whether a chemical reaction will occur or not. And generally whenever we discuss a chemical reaction, its feasibility, we look into the energy of the product, and generally if the energy of product P is lower than, that is energy of product P is lower than energy of starting material, we say that the reaction is feasible because it is thermodynamically favorable. So if this will happen, that energy of product P is lower than energy of product the starting material, that is EP minus ES, this is negative, then we will get delta G, the Gibbs free energy, negative generally. Okay, temperature is involved, but in general we can say it will be negative, and that's why the reaction is thermodynamically favorable. But the interesting thing is, all reaction which are thermodynamically favorable, that will happen simultaneously, or it will happen for sure. It is not like that. The reaction may be thermodynamically very much favorable, but kinetics may be very slow and the reaction may not occur. So both thermodynamics and kinetics is important. So first in this video we will talk about thermodynamics, and then we will talk about kinetics, right? So what is thermodynamics basically? So thermodynamics is, so from the knowledge of different energies related to different bonds. For example, sigma bond in general more stable compared to a pi bond. Okay, so if you compare sigma bond energy of any kind of bond, and if you compare it with pi bond, you will see that in general sigma bonds are more with more energy than pi bond. That is, if you form a sigma bond, you will release more energy than if you form a pi bond. Similarly, if you break a sigma bond, you need more energy than if you break a pi bond. So this we know. So that's why for example, in a reaction, let's say we are doing bromination of this alkene, so we are adding bromine, we will get this dibromo compound, right? So in this case what we are doing, we are breaking a pi bond, and also we are breaking the bromine sigma bond, which is not that much strong. So this sigma bond is not that much strong and this pi bond inherently is not that much strong, but we are now forming two sigma bonds, this one and this one, which are strong. So CBr sigma bond, this is strong compared to this bromine sigma bond or this carbon pi bond, and that's why this reaction is thermodynamically favorable. So from the knowledge of bond energy we can say that which energy is thermodynamically favorable and which is not. So this is one thing. So from our intuitive knowledge that sigma bond is more stable than pi bond, and also from all these things we can say few points, that number one, pi bond is more reactive than sigma bond. So this is a general thing, not always, but in general pi bond is more reactive than sigma. And second thing what we know is electron flows from negative to positive center. Okay, so these two knowledge we have, and based on this knowledge we will begin our journey to the chemical reaction. Now if we talk about thermodynamics, first thing which we have to discuss is the hard and soft acid base principle. So this hard and soft acid base principle is very important in both organic and inorganic chemistry, although it is first introduced in inorganic chemistry, but now it is widely used in organic chemistry also, and this is a very important concept. So what is the principle of hard and soft acid and base? So the principle is very simple, that hard likes hard, that is hard acid will like hard base. Similarly soft likes soft, that is soft acid will like soft base. So this is the basic principle. In terms of chemical equation we can say that, let's say we have a hard acid bind with a soft base and a soft acid bind with a hard base. So after the reaction what will happen? Hard acid will bind with hard base and soft acid will bind with soft acid will bind with soft base. So the reaction will go from left hand side to right hand side spontaneously. That means this hard combination and soft combination is more stable compared to a hard soft combination. In this case both are hard soft combination, whereas in the right hand side we have hard combination and soft combination. So this is the principle, that hard combination is always energetically more stable compared to a soft combination. Now this is not in absolute sense, that is hardness and softness is a relative thing. So we can show it by an example. For example, if you consider OH minus, we know it is a strong base, but it is not a strong base always. For example, if you compare the reaction of OH minus with proton, any kind of proton, that reaction is going to be very favorable, that is it will readily react with proton to form water. But if you now compare the reaction of OH minus with, let's say, silver Ag plus, this reaction will not be that much favorable. Similarly, if you compare the reaction of I minus, with H plus, that reaction will occur, but it is not that much favorable, it is slow, and HI is not a stable one. HI is a strong acid, we know, because HI breaks easily. That means this reaction from left to right is not favorable. Whereas if you react I minus with Ag plus, this reaction is quite faster and you will get AgI precipitate, right? So this is faster. So here in this case, this OH minus is a hard base, and this I minus is a soft base, whereas this H plus is a hard acid and Ag plus is a soft acid. So that's why this soft interaction is more favorable, and in this case this harder interaction is more favorable. But this hard soft interaction in this case, and in this case also the hard soft interaction, these are not favorable one. So from this example we can see the difference. But always the hardness and softness is a relative thing, and we have to compare between the two whenever we are discussing any hardness or softness, right? But there is a scale of absolute hardness and absolute hardness and absolute electronegativity. So hardness and softness is very much related to the electronegativity of a substituent. So how we define whether a molecule or whether a group is hard or soft? So the definition of absolute hardness, and it is represented by eta, is given by difference between ionization energy of the molecule and electron affinity of the molecule. So this is the definition of absolute hardness. This eta is called absolute hardness, and you can see if the difference is very high, this difference ionization energy and electron affinity is very high, then the molecule will be hardest, whereas if the difference is close to 0, then it will be soft, right? Now on which factor this ionization energy and electron affinity depends? So the ionization energy of a molecule depend on the energy of HOMO, that is energy of HOMO. The highest occupied molecular orbital is roughly equal to ionization energy. Actually it is equal to ionization energy, only the sign you have to differ. So whatever the magnitude of ionization energy is similar to that of the energy of HOMO of that molecule. Similarly electron affinity is the energy of LUMO. Okay, so the magnitude of energy of HOMO is the ionization energy of the molecule, whereas the energy of LUMO is the magnitude of electron affinity of the molecule. So a hard molecules means there is a large separation of HOMO and LUMO. So if HOMO LUMO is separated by large energy, it is hard. So for hard species HOMO and LUMO highly separated, okay, and for soft species HOMO and LUMO are close in energy. Okay, so by looking at the energy of molecular orbitals, the frontier molecular orbitals HOMO and LUMO, we can say whether a molecule is hard or soft. So in general, if you have a hard species, that means its HOMO and LUMO has high energy separation. For example, you know that OH minus is a hard species or F minus is a hard species, and all these elements, this oxygen and this fluorine, they are highly electronegative. So electronegativity high means their energy of their HOMO will be lower in energy, whereas energy of their LUMO will be higher in energy, right? And soft species like I minus, all these things, they are less electronegative and their HOMO energy of their HOMO will be higher, whereas the LUMO energy will be lower. So that means HOMO LUMO separation is low in this case. Now so we know that which are hard and which are soft. So in general, whenever we are considering a molecule or a group or a ion, so generally charged species are hard and they are more electronegative, like oxygen based OH minus or fluoride. These are hard species for which electronegativity is very high and their energy, that is energy of HOMO, is very low. And for hard acids, like for example H plus is a hard acid, and you know it has s orbital, 1s orbital, which has very low in energy, which is the LUMO of the molecule, right? So their LUMO is very high in energy, 1s orbital high in energy, vacant orbital. So for hard acid, high energy LUMO. For hard base, low energy HOMO. Okay, and for soft acid what will happen? Low LUMO, low energy LUMO, and for soft base a high HOMO. Okay, so this thing you have to remember whenever you are considering whether a species is hard or soft. Now the next thing we have to look into is why hard combination is stable and why soft combination is stable, and this is a very important question. So first we will look into whether soft interaction is stable. So we have said that soft acid will have high energy HOMO. So let's say you have a soft species, it will have energy of HOMO somewhere here and it is filled with electrons. This is the energy axis. Whereas for a soft base, for soft base the energy of HOMO will be higher. If I said wrong, forgive me. So for the soft, this is soft base, and it has high energy HOMO. So this is soft base HOMO, and for soft acid the energy of LUMO will be low, so it will be somewhere here. So this is soft acid, it is vacant and it is the LUMO. So let's say we are considering Ag plus and I minus. Okay, this is for example. Now what is the source of their stability? So you can see, because HOMO is high in energy and LUMO is low in energy, they are close to one another, and if two orbitals are close in energy they will strongly overlap, right? And this strong overlap will lead to high energy lowering. So this E1 energy lowering, you can see from this level, this alpha level, the energy drop is very high. So because of this, and only this orbital is filled, this is empty orbital, so overall you have 2E1 amount of energy gain through this interaction. And because this interaction is very strong, as they are close in energy, that's why it will give higher stability for a soft interaction. If you have a hard soft interaction, this energy matching will not be there, because in that case HOMO LUMO will be separated by high energy and this energy, amount of energy, will be low. So that's why that interaction will not be stable. So that this is the reason why soft interaction is stable one. But why hard interaction is stable? Because in case of hard interaction, we know that hard base have very low energy. So this is your low energy HOMO for a hard base, and for the hard acid you have very high energy LUMO, right? So this is high, this is hard acid. So this is like, let's say you have F minus and here you have, let's say, H plus. So now what is the source of their stability? Because in this case the orbital interaction is very low, only slight amount of energy lowering will be there. You can see, if you compare with the previous one, you can see this is a very slight amount of energy. So this energy lowering is not enough to stabilize the molecule. So in this case the stability of the harder interaction comes from the ionic interaction or Coulombic. So harder interaction you can better represent the interaction like sodium chloride. So you know that sodium chloride is an ionic salt, and interaction between sodium plus and chloride minus is very strong, and in this case we don't compare it as an ionic bond, rather we say that full electron transfer occur from sodium to chlorine. Similarly here the full electron transfer occur from this orbital, and this total energy difference from here to here, this is the measure of the stability here. In normal case for covalent bonding, this is the energy drop which we consider, but for harder interaction this energy difference is the source of stability, and it is not a overlap basically. So overlap is not an important factor here. Here the energy difference between the two species, two orbital, is more important, and that's why the harder interaction is stable. So it is the source of the interaction of harder interaction is the ionic force or the Coulombic interaction, Coulombic attractive force. So now we know that why hard interaction is more stable and soft interaction is more stable compared to a hard soft interaction. Because you know, if you now consider a soft hard interaction, then ionic interaction will be there, but that will be not that much strong because the separation will be not that high, and also generally soft species are not charged. So if charge is not involved, there is no point of Coulombic attraction, right? So that's why hard soft interaction is inherently not stable. So now we can conclude that harder interaction is stable and soft interaction is stable compared to a hard soft interaction. But this is not a general thing. There will be lot of exceptions where we can see that hard soft interaction is inherently more stable compared to a harder or soft interaction. This is related to the inherent basicity and acidity of a molecule. For example, if some base is inherently more strong, then it will it doesn't matter whether it binds with a hard center or soft center, the interaction will be strong, and this is the exception. But in any way, this principle of hard soft acid base principle is very important for organic chemistry, and we will see it in many times. Now, so this is about thermodynamics of the reaction. Now let us talk about a more important topic, and that is the transition state. Transition state. Okay, so what is a transition state? So any molecule from a starting material, let's say S, if we get a product P, it goes through a transition state like this. So this high energy state is called the transition state. This is the energy axis. So generally starting material and product has low energy, but this transition state is the point where your compound or your complex has the highest amount of energy. This is called the transition state. Now how this transition state comes into picture? For that we have to consider two species. Let's say species A and species B, we are bringing them close to one another, and so basically their orbitals will interact. Let's say your A species has some field orbital here, another field orbital here, and this is the vacant orbital. So this is, let's say, psi 1, psi 2, psi 3 for species A. And similarly for your species B, let's say species B is slightly more electronegative, so that's why its energies will be slightly lower. So let's say this is the psi A, this is the psi B, and this is the this is psi 1, psi 2, psi 3, and this is for species B, and for it also these two orbitals are filled and this is empty. Now this is the HOMO for species A, and this is the HOMO for species B, and these two are filled orbitals. So in general we can see that if A, so this is a very general interaction, we don't specify A or B may be anything, but the thing we can see is that whatever the structure of A and B, these two field orbitals are most close in energy, and if their symmetry matches they will interact. So these interaction will lead to some new orbitals like this, and this is the most strong overlap. But due to this interaction, two orbitals will be generated. This, let's say this is phi 1 and this is phi 2, but both will be filled with 2 electrons. And because this kind of interaction, both are filled with electrons, so now if this is E1, this is energy drop, and energy rise is E2, we know that E2 is more than E1, because you know that if bonding and anti-bonding both orbitals are filled and only two orbitals interact, this one and this one, then the anti-bonding orbital will be more anti-bonding compared to the bonding orbital is bonding, right? So the E2 will be higher in energy than E1. So overall the situation is anti-bonding, and this is a repulsive force. So this is the origin of any kind of repulsion, that whenever we put two molecules together, these molecules will face this kind of repulsive force due to their field orbitals. So all molecules have field orbitals, and whenever you put two molecules closer, these repulsive force will be there due to this anti-bonding situation, and this is the reason for what we call the activation energy. So we call this term activation energy anytime whenever we consider any reaction, that if we do a reaction we have to overcome the barrier of activation energy. That is, there is some kind of energy we have to supply so that the molecule overcome the barrier of activation energy. Now what is the barrier? The barrier is actually this repulsive force which is originated due to the overlap or the interaction between the field orbitals of two molecules, and this is also the basis of steric hindrance and all other repulsive force. So whatever repulsive force, whatever barrier we face whenever we want to do a chemical reaction, the origin of that is this interaction between two field orbitals. Now we know that the reaction happens, so it is obvious that there is some another energy term which is favorable, which is dragging the reaction to the product side. So what is the force then? So now you can see this orbital, this one, right, this HOMO, it can also interact with this psi3, right? So it can also interact with this psi3. Now let me draw it in a different picture. So this was the orbitals, this psi1, psi2, psi3. I am drawing again for the clarity, and these three, psi1, psi2, psi3, these two are filled with electrons and these two are filled with electrons. So in the previous case we have seen the interaction between this field orbital and this field orbital, but now this is the HOMO of one species and this is the LUMO of other species, right? So these two can also interact. Now if these two interact, you can see we will again get two orbitals, but now only the low energy orbital will be filled. So overall there is a stability because this orbital is now empty, so overall there is a bonding situation. So due to this bonding situation, this kind of interaction is favorable and all other interactions are there. For example, this field orbital can also interact with this one, so we can have this kind of interaction here, right, another term. But again this is this energy drop, let's say this is E2, this E2 will be lower compared to E1 because these two are close in energy to one another. That's why overlap between them is more strong, whereas these two, this one and this one, they are far apart from one another, and that's why the overlap is not that strong. So whatever we see is the interaction between this HOMO and this LUMO is the most profitable interaction which we can consider, although all other interaction between field orbital and unfilled orbital is there, but this is the most stable or more profitable interaction which we can consider. So in general, HOMO of A will interact with the LUMO of B. So this whatever we discussed there, this is actually kind of perturbation. So we can say that whenever we bring two molecules close to one another, the energy of their orbitals is actually perturbed, right? So this is a perturbation. Perturbation means disturbing. So energy of one orbital, energy of the orbital on molecule A will be disturbed or perturbed by the energy of orbital on molecule B and vice versa. So this perturbation will lead to kind of interaction. One is energy rising, that is the interaction between the field orbital, this one, and this is the first order perturbation, and it is more strong because they are close in energy. This drawing may not be appropriate, but actually you know that HOMOs of different molecule will be close in energy. So the interaction between two field orbital is the most strong interaction, and this is the first order perturbation. So this is this repulsive interaction, this is actually repulsive interaction, and this is the first order perturbation, right? So this is the first order perturbation, whereas any kind of other interaction, that is interaction between unfilled and filled, so unfilled of A and filled of B or vice versa, that is second order perturbation, right? So this is not that much strong. So all these energy terms will be there. Now based on all these things, there is a equation called Selim-Kopman equation. There is an equation called Selim-Kopman equation which deals with the energetics of a reaction, which is represented by delta E. So it consists of three terms. I am not writing down the actual equation because that is too messy and you don't need to know this. You just need to know what the terms qualitatively mean. So I just write term. So if you want to look into the equation, you can get it anywhere. So term 1 plus term 2 plus term 3. Now what are these terms? This term 1 is actually this repulsive interaction, that is interaction between two field orbitals. This term 2 is actually the Coulombic force between two molecules. For example, if any two thing interact, like H plus and F minus, so they are charged, one is positively charged, one is negatively charged, so there is a Coulombic attraction between them. So this term is represented by term 2, and this term 3 is the second order perturbation, that is the interaction between HOMO and LUMO. Actually there are all kind of field and unfilled interaction, but we are interested only in HOMO LUMO, because that is the most profitable interaction which we have out of this all kind of interaction. So whenever we are considering any kind of chemical reaction, we have to consider all these three terms because they are very important. Now between among all these three terms, the last two terms, that is attraction, the Coulombic attraction, and the second order perturbation, that is interaction between HOMO LUMO, that is the bonding situation, or that is the profitable situation, whereas term 1 represent the unfavorable situation, that is the repulsion between field orbitals, right? And after this onward, we will not discuss about term 1 because this will be inherently there. Whenever you are considering any reaction, this term 1 will be there, and we will not bother about it, whether although it is very important, but we will not bother about it because we cannot eliminate this term. So we will only consider term 2 and term 3, that is the Coulombic attraction part and the HOMO LUMO interaction part. Now let us again come back to the transition state theory. So we said that whenever a starting material A goes to a product P, it goes through a transition state. Now what is the origin of this transition state? The origin of this transition state is this perturbation, that is when you put, so actually A will not go to P, you have to interact A with B, so two molecules will interact to give a product. So whenever you bring A and B closer, their orbital energy will be perturbed, and due to this perturbation the energy will be raised, and somewhere here it will stop. So this is the highest energy state, and this is called the transition state, and this is the result of perturbation of the orbital. And you can easily see that the energy, whatever here it is, contributed by this repulsive term, this term 1, because field orbitals will interact in a repulsive way, and that is the origin for the activation energy. So we say this is the activation energy. What is the activation energy? Energy gap between the transition state and the starting material. This is called the activation energy. Now previously scientists used to thought that if the energy of product is lower than energy of starting material, then the reaction will be favorable. And this is represented by this diagram, that is, let's say you have this energy axis, and this is the energy of starting material, so and this is the starting energy of product. Okay, so this reaction is always favorable, they used to think. Now in some reaction we know that we get two products, one is major, one is minor. So let's say you are starting from something like A plus B, and you are getting two products. Product one is P1, which has energy somewhere here, and another one has energy somewhere here, which is P2. Both are lower in energy than A and B, but product P1 is lower in energy than product P2. Now we don't know whether they are coming through the same transition state or not, but previously scientists used to thought that you will always get this product P1 as your major product because they are lower in energy, they are thermodynamically more stable. So they used to think like that, but later it turns out that it is not like the case. It may be that product P2 is more stable. Why? Because one thing may be that the transition state through which product P1 we are getting is lower in energy than the transition state through which we are getting P2. So in this case, this is transition state 1 and this is transition state 2. So transition state 1 is lower in energy, that means we have to put less energy to overcome the activation energy barrier compared to another activation energy barrier, which we can say EA2. This is EA1, this is EA2. So EA2 activation energy 2 is higher than activation energy 1, that's why we will get product P1 as major product. But this is not necessarily that this will always be the case. The reverse case may also be there, that is, let's say you are getting from A to B, you are getting P1 and P2, but now the transition state which is giving P1 is lower in energy than the transition state which is giving P1, right? So in this case we are getting P1 through a transition state which has lower energy compared to the product P1. In this case the transition state is high in energy. So the main thing is we cannot say that the transition state of a certain reaction is high in energy because the product is high in energy. So product is not always related to the transition state of the reaction, and in this regard one very important principle comes, that is called Hammond's postulate. Hammond's postulate. So what is Hammond's postulate? Hammond's postulate deals with what will be the structure of a transition state in any kind of reaction. So we have two kind of reaction, one is endothermic, another one is exothermic. So this is the example of, so this is, let's say, your starting material and this is your product, and this is the example of exothermic reaction. This is exothermic reaction because your product is low in energy and you are releasing energy out of the reaction, whereas this is an example of endothermic reaction where you have product which is higher in energy compared to the starting material. This is endothermic reaction. Now Hammond, according to the Hammond's postulate, in case of exothermic reaction the transition state will look like that the structure that of the starting material, because you can see in case of exothermic reaction the transition state is more close in energy to the starting material than to the product, whereas in case of endothermic reaction the transition state energy is closer in energy to the product than the starting material, so it will have resemblance with the product. So in case of endothermic reaction we can say that the transition state has resemblance with product, whereas in case of exothermic reaction the transition state has resemblance with that of starting material. So this is very important for predicting the structure of the transition state, because transition state is not something that we can determine from a spectroscopy or anything. It is our intuition from where we get the structure of the transition state. So knowing whether the reaction is endothermic or exothermic is very important. Now another thing which I should mention is so we have seen that the interaction between HOMO of one species and the LUMO of other species. So this is the LUMO of other species. This is the main interacting force which lead to the chemical reaction. So this is the main interaction which will lead to any chemical reaction, right? Now if you compare two species or two situation where in some case, let's say your HOMO has energy here and LUMO has energy here. So this is your HOMO of one species and LUMO of one species, and in some other case where you have HOMO here and your LUMO has very high energy, right? This may be the case. This is your energy axis. So in this case you can see there will be a strong overlap, right? And in this case the overlap will be weak because they are close apart from one another. So energy drop E2 and this is E1. So this E1 will be much higher than E2 because in this case the energy is not that much strong, but here the energy, the interaction is strong and you have a strong overlap. So this reaction will be faster compared to this one. So from knowing the energy of HOMO LUMO we can say whether a reaction will be fast or slow. So we discussed about perturbation, transition state theory, Hammond's postulate, all these things. Now we are in a position that we can discuss a real real reaction, but we will not discuss a complicated reaction. Rather, we will see a very simple reaction, and this is our imaginary reaction between allyl anion and allyl cation. So we will see this very simple reaction. So let us first draw the orbitals of these two species. So let's say these are the orbitals of allyl anion. So in case of allyl anion, you have all these three orbitals like this. Okay, so you have these three orbitals, and if you just draw the symmetries, so this is fully symmetric, this has a node here and this has two nodes like this. Okay, so let me just copy it. Okay, so let me just copy this thing. Okay, so now let me go to the previous thing. Okay, so this is the thing, we can copy it from here to here, and now we will draw the energy level. So this is the energy levels of the two species, this one and this one. So the red one represents allyl anion and the green one represents allyl cation. So in case of allyl anion, these two orbitals will be filled with electrons, and in case of allyl cation, only this orbital will be filled with electrons, right? Now in this case, what is the, so we will not discuss about the interaction between field orbitals, that is we will discuss the term 1, because term 1 will be there in any way. We are only interested in term 2. So what is term 2 here? The term 2 here is the interaction between, so this is the HOMO, this is the HOMO of allyl anion, and this is the LUMO of allyl cation. So these two will overlap very strongly and the energy drop will be there. So this is E1 and there will be energy drop. Now that means this is a profitable situation and these two will interact. So with curly arrow we can show the reaction like this, that is, this is how it will interact, and you will have a species like this. So this is the product. Okay, and this is how the orbital interaction is leading to this product. Now not only the orbital, if you now recall the Selim-Kopman equation, there were three terms. So first term, the repulsive interaction is there, we are not considering, so we are considering the second two terms. So in the second term we had another interaction term, and that is the Coulombic interaction. So in this case it is negatively charged and it is positively charged, so there will be a Coulombic attraction between them. So this is term 2, and term 2 is this orbit, and term 3, there will be term 3, that is the orbital overlap. So all these energies, all these interactions will lead to this reaction, and this is how we will get a reaction. Now although this reaction looks a very unusual reaction, because you can see this HOMO and LUMO has same energy here. For allyl anion and allyl cation, HOMO and LUMO are exactly same in energy, and that's why it is a more like a charge transfer reaction, not a real reaction. But in any way we are using this as a model reaction, as our imaginary reaction, right? So another thing which we should tell here is that these two species can react in another way also. So for this allyl system, this is position 1, this is position 2, this is position 3, and this reaction shows that reaction is occurring between position 1 with position 1 or with position 3. But another mode of interaction is possible, that is reaction between the position 3 and position 3, and that's how it can react to give you this species just erase it. Yeah, so here will be another arrow. So here you have negative, here you have positive, and here you have negative, here you have positive. So finally it can lead to a product like this, and this reaction is also possible, but this reaction will not occur, and only this reaction will occur. Why? Because besides this Coulombic interaction and all other things, we have to see where the orbital have higher coefficient, and this reaction actually represent the interaction between these two. So with these HOMO, so HOMO of allyl cation and LUMO of allyl anion. So if these two interact, sorry, these two can also interact. Okay, these two can also interact, and also these two can also interact. So all the filled and unfilled orbital can interact, and this reaction can happen, but we see that this reaction will not happen, and only this reaction is happen. Why? Because while considering any reaction, we have to consider two terms: the extent of orbital overlap, and for that the coefficient of orbital is important. Now if you consider position 3, if you consider, so only this HOMO and this LUMO interaction is important. All other interaction, so this is not the HOMO actually, so all other interaction between filled and unfilled orbital is not that much important, because they are far apart from one another. Only between this HOMO and this LUMO is important. Now why? So this HOMO LUMO interaction is actually occurring between, you can see this is this one and this one, but why this position 3 are not reacting? So for that we have to see the coefficient of HOMO and LUMO in position 3, and if you consider the HOMO and LUMO of the allyl anion or allyl cation, you can see this is the thing, and it has 0 coefficient. So this is 0 coefficient on the position 3, and because there is no orbital coefficient, how it can overlap? So this is the reason why position 3 will not overlap. So whenever we are considering any overlap, to predict the regioselectivity of a reaction, we have to look into the orbital coefficient, that where the orbital has most coefficient and where it has less coefficient. In this case we can show this reaction very easily by this curly arrow mechanism, and this looks good, but to have the knowledge of molecular orbital diagram is very important, and that's why we discussed this thing. So we have seen that all the things, that is HOMO-LUMO interaction, Coulombic interaction, and the coefficient of orbital, all things are very important. Now let us talk about the final thing of today's video, and that is the hard and soft nucleophile and electrophile. So at the beginning of the video I discussed about hard and soft acids and base, and the same hard soft principle is also applied for a electrophile and a nucleophile. So in case of nucleophile, we know that nucleophile has the HOMO, so it is the HOMO of the nucleophile that react in a reaction. So nucleophile is actually same like a base, whereas electrophile is same like that of an acid. So in case of hard nucleophile, it will have a high energy, in case of hard nucleophile it will have low energy HOMO. Low energy HOMO represent a hard nucleophile, and high energy HOMO represent soft nucleophile, whereas for electrophile, if you have low energy LUMO, it will be soft electrophile, and if you have a high energy LUMO, it will be hard electrophile. Okay, now let us see this with an example. Let's say you have two nucleophiles. One is alkene, simple alkene, because alkene has pi electron, it can act as a nucleophile, and you have also let's say OH minus, which is also nucleophile. Now this alkene, because it is not charged and it is only based on pi electron, it will be considered as soft nucleophile because it has high energy HOMO. The energy of pi orbital of alkene is high, whereas in case of OH minus, it is considered as hard nucleophile. Why? Because it has low energy HOMO. Now let us take two electrophiles. One is bromine, Br2, and another one is like proton H plus. So in case of Br2, it doesn't have any charge or anything, so it is considered as soft electrophile, whereas proton is considered as hard electrophile, and in fact it is the hardest electrophile possible. Now if you compare the reaction between alkene and bromine, which is quite faster to give you this dibromo compound, right? But if you consider the same reaction with OH minus and Br2, the reaction will occur and you will have OH Br, but it is slow. It is fast, it is slow. So we can see that this soft nucleophile react with soft electrophile in a faster way, whereas this hard nucleophile react with the soft nucleophile in a slower way. Similarly, if you now compare the reaction of alkene with acid H plus, it will be protonated to give this carbocation, but this reaction will be slow. But if you now compare the same reaction with OH minus and H plus, it is very much exothermic and it will give water, and the reaction is very fast. So again, these two are hard, so hard reaction is faster compared to this soft interaction. So it is same like a hard soft acid base principle, but again you have to remember that it is not a general thing and there are some exceptions. For example, Ag plus is considered as soft acid, right? So you may think that alkene, which is a soft nucleophile, it will react more effectively with Ag plus compared to OH minus, but in this case the AgOH is more stable and the reaction of Ag plus, which is a soft acid, is much faster with OH minus compared to alkene, and this is because inherent stability of this AgOH or inherent basicity of this OH minus. So hard soft acid base principle is a relative thing, and you may not rely fully on it. There are many other factors which is responsible for the reaction. So throughout this discussion we established the fact that for a reaction to occur there are several things which are responsible. Some of them we classify as thermodynamical parameter and some as the kinetic parameter. The thermodynamic parameters deal with the hard soft acid base principle and all these things, that is it mainly regards the stability of the product, the bonds being broken or formed in the reaction, all these things, whereas the kinetic parameters are like orbital interactions and the Coulombic interactions and all these things. There are many other things like orientation of certain molecules while doing a reaction, the steric hindrance, which are responsible for a reaction and they determine whether a reaction is fast or slow, and we will discuss them while we are discussing some specific reactions. But this is a general description of chemical reaction, that how a chemical reaction occurs, and then I hope that you understood the concept. So that's all. I will end this video here. Thank you for watching.